thank you for those of you who are here. I'm sure we'll have more join us. Thanks for joining us for this Regenstrief special seminar. I'm Deborah Stombaugh. I'm Regenstrief's Chief Financial Officer, and I will be moderating today's session. And today we welcome Ted Polley and Elizabeth Whipple as our speakers. The topic is using, I hope I pronounce it correctly, ORCID and SciENcv to support your research presence and stay compliant with NIH Biosketch form changes. Please note the session is being recorded and we should have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So feel free to add your questions, comments to the chat. And let's see now to our presenters. Mr. Ted Polley is a social sciences and digital publishing librarian and the director of the Center for Digital Scholarship in the IUPUI University Library. He has a Master of Library and Information Science degree from Indiana University Bloomington, and his research interests are in open access, open data, library publishing, and data visualization. And Miss Elizabeth Whipple is Assistant Director for Research and Translational Sciences in the Indiana University School of Medicine's Ruth Lilly Medical Library. She has a Master of Library Science degree from Indiana University Bloomington and is our campus expert on compliance with NIH public access policy. Her research interests have focused on bibliometric use in biomedical, health informatics, and translational sciences, and show publication trends over time. So at this time, I will hand it over to them. And as I noted, put your comments and questions in our chat.
Great. Thanks for that nice introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can all see my slides and take it from there. Okay, can everyone see my slides? Okay, excellent. As Deborah said, my name is Ted Polley. I'm the director of the Center for Digital Scholarship and our library's point person for ORCID. So I'll be talking to you about ORCID today, and then I'll turn it over to Beth to talk about SciENcv. So what we're going to talk about briefly, we'll talk a little bit about what ORCID is and some of its major benefits. I'm sure many of you are familiar with ORCID. You've probably seen the IDs in people's signatures in their emails or on article landing pages for journals. So we'll talk a little bit about what ORCID is, and then we'll jump over and I'll do a live demo, technology willing, of how to create an ORCID account if you don't have one yet, how to start populating your profile, and then how to connect ORCID to some trusted organizations, which will save you lots of time. It will help your profile auto update with new publications, grants, and things like that. So what is ORCID? So ORCID stands for Open Researcher Contributor ID. ORCID as an organization is a nonprofit. It's sustained by member fees, like members like IUPUI and Indiana University are both members. And ORCID provides unique identifiers that connect individuals with their professional information. So their affiliations, their institutional affiliations, grants, publications, peer review, and lots of other things. So the ORCID ID itself is an open and persistent identifier assigned to an individual. So think of it kind of like a barcode for you as a researcher. If made public, it allows individuals to share their information with other research systems, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, and ensures that they get credit and recognition for all their scholarly contributions. So you can see I have an example here. This is my ORCID ID. The ID itself is that string of numbers after the last slash, and then they're often formatted as URLs. So you can click on it and go straight to a person's ORCID profile. So ORCID profiles allow individuals to display all their professional information in one place. It's essentially like your CV, but the advantage over just posting a PDF of your CV online is that ORCID data is structured and that it's interoperable with other systems. So like when you submit manuscript for publication in a journal, or you're submitting a grant, there's the option to connect your ORCID ID to those submissions, and then allowing your profile to be automatically updated with publications and keeping everything in one place. If made public and connected to trusted entities like Crossref, profiles will automatically update with new publications, like I said, and ultimately that will save you lots of time. So here's just a picture of sort of ORCID at IUPUI and how it interacts with some of the other systems that you might use on a regular basis. One advantage, so you can actually export a list of your publications from ORCID for importing into DMAI, which is the annual reporting software that we all use. And there's a link at the end of my slides to a brief guide on how to do that. So how does ORCID benefit researchers? So as I mentioned earlier, it's a unique identifier. It allows researchers to distinguish themselves from everyone else, even if they have the same name. It provides correct attribution of all your research outputs and activities, and it integrates with other systems, saving you time filling out forms. So for example, if you're submitting a journal article and you enter your ORCID ID, it's going to automatically pull in your institutional affiliation, your name, and other pieces of information that might be needed. And it improves discoverability. So anytime that your ORCID ID is linked somewhere, people can click on it and see your entire profile and all of your other scholarly contributions. So here are some of the resources that I mentioned, and I'll make sure that I send these slides out in addition to a handout that covers the next stage of the demo that I'm going to show you. So I'll walk you through setting up an ORCID account if you don't have one, and then I'll show you how to start populating your profile, some things that you may want to think about, and then how to connect to trusted organizations so that your profile will automatically update. So one of the first things that you can do if you don't have an ORCID account yet, or even if you do have an ORCID account, you have the option to connect it to the university's single sign-on, which will allow you to log into ORCID with your IU username and password, which just simplifies your life. You won't have to remember your ORCID password. So you can do that by accessing through your institution. And it's already detected here that I am connected to IU's network, but I can search if not and select Indiana University, click continue, and that will have me CAS authenticate, and then my ORCID account that I set up, or if I have one existing, will be connected to my IU username and login. I'm not going to do that at this point. I'm just going to jump over and show you how to start setting up an ORCID if you don't have an account yet. So if you don't have an account, you can go to, you'll see here that I'm actually in the ORCID sandbox, but if you just go to orcid.org, and again, this is all linked in the handout that I'll send out after this session, and click register now. Simply set up a profile similar to the way you set up any other profile online. We always encourage folks to use a primary email address that's not affiliated with their institution. That way, if you happen to leave IU for another position, you'll be able to log in. So if you have a Gmail or something like that, it's best to use a more permanent email address. There's also the option to associate multiple email addresses with the same ORCID profile. So if you would prefer to use your IU and then add your Gmail later, you can do that. I'm going to use a test email. And it's going to ask me to confirm. And again, like I said, you can add another email there if you'd like. I'll click next. And then one thing that may happen, if you have set up an ORCID profile before and you don't remember that you have, you will be prompted to make sure that none of these other accounts are actually you. If you see an account, like you can see here, I've set up a bunch of test accounts here. If you see one that is likely yours, what you'll want to do is retrieve the password for that account. Don't create another one. That kind of defeats the whole unique identifier purpose of ORCID. So if you need help doing that, there's some documentation online that I can point you to that will help you do that. If in fact none of these are you, you can click none of these are me and continue with the registration. And then you will set up a password. And if you'd like to receive notifications, you can click that checkbox. And then this is the really important piece here. So this is where you set the visibility of your ORCID profile. And we really encourage folks to make their ORCID profiles public, in part because that allows for easier integration with other research systems. And also because this gives you the opportunity to sort of claim your identity as a scholar, collecting all of your information in one place, all of your publications, grants, and things like that, and making it publicly available is a good way to increase your visibility as a scholar. If for some reason you'd like to set specific pieces of your profile private, you can do that, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But by default, I encourage everyone to make the profile itself public. And then you'll have to agree to ORCID's terms and then confirm you're not a robot. We'll see if the sandbox works. Okay. At this point, your profile is set up. ORCID will have sent you a confirmation email that you'll need to click a link for. Verifying your email address. And then you should be ready to go. The sandbox is gonna have to jump back over here. You should be ready to go to start populating your ORCID profile. So a couple pieces of information that you want to pay attention to right off the bat. One of the useful things about ORCID is this also known as field. So if you have if you go by another name, or you publish under another name, or your name is changed at some point, you can indicate all the other versions of your name. So I happen to go by Ted, even though my legal name is David. So I like to include also known as Ted Polley here. If you'd like to add additional email addresses, you can do so by coming down to emails and adding another email address. By default, any of the other email addresses that you add will be set to private, but if you'd like to make those public, you can do so here. And you'll notice that throughout your ORCID profile, these little account settings are visible or are associated with each piece of information that you enter. So if you want to make a particular publication private or a particular grant private, you can do so. It's a good idea to add an ORCID bibliography, just a little blurb about yourself, and you can do so here. I'll just put librarian. And then you'll want to go through and start adding your affiliations and then populating the rest of your profile. For most of these things, you'll be adding them manually, but I'll show you in a few minutes how you can automatically pull in publications and grants. But for employment and education, you have to add those things manually. So you can click this add manually, and then you can search. And you'll find entries for most institutions already. So you can see I have here just the general one for IUPUI. The Fairbanks School of Public Health is also in there. At this point, IU doesn't have an automated system for its faculty and staff to connect their ORCID profiles to Indiana University. That's something that other universities do have and that IU is working on. So in the future, there will be an easier way to connect as affiliated to IU. But at this point, you'll have to add things manually. Okay, let's jump over to, I'll jump over to my actual ORCID profile, and I'll show you how you can connect to trusted organizations to start pulling in publication information and grant information and things like that. So let me log into my actual ORCID profile. Okay, so we'll start with adding some works. If you scroll down to the works section and you click on add works, search and link, and you scroll down to the first one that I recommend is Crossref. So here we go, the Crossref metadata search. This will allow you to search Crossref for publications that, that you've either authored or been a co-author on, and automatically pull that information into your ORCID profile. And then once you've connected with Crossref as a trusted entity, any journal that you publish in that registers DOIs with Crossref, and it's most of them, your profile will be automatically updated when those publications, when those publishers register those DOIs with Crossref. So if it's the first time you've used this, it's going to ask you to authorize access so Crossref can connect to your ORCID profile, and you can click authorize access. And again, this will save you lots of time in the future because anything you publish with a DOI registered with Crossref will automatically appear in your ORCID profile. But if you are just setting it up now and you want to search for things that you've published already, you can search by your name. You can also search for articles and book chapters and things like that by title. So if I wanted to search for a particular title for a book chapter that I wrote, I can do that. Then you'll see here the entry that I'm looking for, this book chapter published in 2014 in the book Measuring Scholarly Impact. And then all I need to do is click add to ORCID and click yes, and it'll appear in my ORCID profile. So if I go back to my profile, oops, and I refresh, you can see that the book chapter replicable science of science studies has been added to my ORCID profile. Similarly, if I have a DOI for something, rather than using the search and link, I can just drop in the DOI. So if I wanted to drop in the DOI for an article that I've written, I can do that and click retrieve works. And it's going to pull in all the information here about this particular journal article. And I'll click add to list. And you can see the journal article has now been added. Again, if you have if you have a fairly unique name, the name search in Crossref works fairly well. So if I went to the Crossref metadata search and I just searched by my name, I could potentially pull up a list of multiple things that I've written and then just go through and click add to ORCID profile fairly quickly. Okay, and now I'll show you how to add grants to your profile. It works pretty much the same way, and then I'll turn it over to Beth to talk about SciENcv. So to add funding, simply come here to this funding section, and you can do the same thing with the search and link. And in this case, you'll be using the dimensions wizard. And if you click on this, it's going to ask you to authorize access. and it's going to pull up this search interface here. It indexes a lot of funding agencies. So there's a really good chance that, you'll be able to find a particular grant that you're looking for in here. I mean, it definitely has NIH, NSF, and major federal funding agencies. If you'd like to see the list of the different agencies, you can, there is, a link that lists them all. I'll have to look for that in a minute, and I'll post it in chat while Beth is presenting. But you can search by name or by grant title. And again, this works pretty similar to the search and link. So I can search for, I can find a list of grants by PI name. And I can go through and I can select multiple, and I can scroll down to the bottom and click next. And then I can submit these to ORCID, and it will add them to my ORCID profile. I won't do that since I'm not on these grants, but it's fairly easy then to remove them later if you need to for some reason. Like if you make a mistake with something, you can always come to this little delete button in your ORCID profile and remove it. And again, for everything in ORCID, you can set the visibility level at a very granular level. So if I wanted to make this particular article private, I can click this little lock icon. Or if I want to only allow trusted parties to see it, and that's a list of people that I've identified as trusted parties, I can select this, or I can select public. Again, I encourage most people to make as much public as they can, because it ultimately just benefits you as a researcher. So that's it. I'm going to stop sharing, and I think we'll have time at the end for questions.
Okay, thanks, Ted. One of the things that I know Ted pointed out is for inputting, if you are already using Google Scholar, there's a way to input a bibtext file. So if you already have a Google Scholar profile populated, there's an easy way of essentially downloading that and then uploading it into ORCID. So if you already have that and you're keeping that up to date, that's another way to easily populate your ORCID profile. I'm going to move on over to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my slides now? Okay, so I'm going to talk about the NIH Biosketch and SciENcv, and looking back over what was asked to present on. Oh, hold on. There we go. Okay. So I'm also going to talk about the changes in the NIH Other Support as well as on the Biosketch. And then I'll cover using SciENcv to create your NIH Biosketches, understanding the role of my bibliography for SciENcv. Those middle two go together, and then showing you how to create multiple versions of the NIH Biosketch. So I don't know how many of you have used the Biosketch tool. So some things have changed since, even just a few years ago when I initially was creating some Biosketches. So the first thing I want to talk about is the NIH Other Support. So what this refers to is other support is often called current or pending support, or sometimes it's called active and pending support. And this information may be requested by funding agencies such as the NIH or NSF. Often this is asked for during a just-in-time report, the JIT report, or for the RPPR. So this is sort of separate from the Biosketch. I think they're hoping to bring some of these things together. The current effective date for this is May 25th of this year. So this is in effect. So these forms are already available. From what I was looking at, it looks like the grace period goes until July 25th. So I think at that time, if you're using the old form, basically things may not go through on the NIH side. So these forms are available for you to use, and they want you to be using them now. So the format page for the NIH Other Support has been reorganized to separate the funded projects from in-kind contributions. So I'll show you an example of that. An additional signature block has been added for the program director or the PI or any other senior or key personnel to certify the accuracy of that information that's submitted on the other support document. Additionally, each of those senior or key personnel must electronically sign the other support form prior to submission. And those forms must be submitted as a flat PDF file. A typed name, which is not a signature, that is unacceptable. So the example that I have is actually, it's not an actual signature, it's typed, but at least just to show you what the form should look like, but just know when that's submitted, there does need to be an actual signature, not just typing in someone's name. So, because I already pulled these up just in case things weren't working. Here is an example of what the other support form looks like now. So you can see up at the top of the form for this other support is the name of the individual, the project and proposal information. I'm going to keep on scrolling through. And then here is how they've pulled out the in-kind section. So these are still both included in the form, but they are sort of pulled apart from one another. And then I'll scroll on down, and then there's sort of this attestation statement at the bottom. And then this is where the PI or key personnel would then put on their signature block, including their actual signature. This is the example of what the form is filled out looks like. So again, here's the other support up at the top. Here's some of the information about the grant. I'm going to scroll on down, some other information. And then here is the in-kind section. So again, this is showing how they've been pulled apart. I'm going to scroll on down so you can see the different things listed in this particular section. And then here it is where it's signed. Again, you would need an actual signature, but since this is the example from their side, I assume that's why they're not just sharing someone's actual signature, but that's what is needed when this document is submitted. So other support is not in the SciENcv tool yet. NIH said that they're finalizing the SciENcv template to have the other support form in there. The anticipated template is available fiscal year of 2022. As of last week, it didn't exist in there, so I think it's still coming. So I'm not sure when that will happen. Hopefully it'll be sometime before the end of this calendar year. All right, so that was talking about the changes in the other support. So now looking at some changes that they've made to the Biosketch tool. So SciENcv is NIH's electronic tool for the Biosketch. This has been available since 2013. So it's been around for like 8 years now. If you've done a Biosketch, you know, generally there's sort of information up at the top, then there's sections A, B, C, and D. So one of the changes right now is that section B was called Positions and Honors. And now it's called Positions, Scientific Appointments, and Honors. So they sort of, I guess, sort of squished together some of those categories. So the positions and scientific appointments include what was included in the positions and employment. It also takes in things like your professional memberships were in that category, but now they're just sort of all sort of squished together under that positions and scientific appointments section. So that's one of the changes in the new Biosketch. Another, to me, this is a bigger change, is that section D, which was called research support, is no longer included in the Biosketch generally. So if you are filling out a fellowship Biosketch, that section is still available. But for the sort of standard Biosketch that most folks are doing, section D no longer exists. Their guidance says that applicants can provide details related to the ongoing and recently completed projects, which often would go into section D. So if you want to include those now, they can be included in section A, the personal statement. Similarly to the other support, the effective date for this is May 25th of this year. And then the grace period is until January 25th of next year. So this new format is already available within the SciENcv tool. So using SciENcv. So let me show you what it looks like. So if you have not logged into NIH, hopefully some of you have, but this is generally what it looks like. So you can see in the upper right. So this is a really old username, but this is my account. It's now tied in with my ERA Commons account. There should be a My NCBI and then your sign out. If you are logged in, you might just see your name or whatever your username is in the upper right. And so if you click on your name, then you'll get a little menu that shows up below that then says things like dashboard, my account. If you click on dashboard, that's how you will see this screen. You may also have a series of boxes when you are logged into your My NCBI account. So you will have a SciENcv box. You may not have anything else in it other than it just saying SciENcv, but then these are the ones that exist for me right now. I'm also a delegate for several other folks. That's why theirs are listed below. And there should be this option to manage SciENcv. So if you're logged in, you may have nothing here. That's okay. Just click on manage SciENcv, and then you'll get to sort of the main SciENcv page. So I've already put in some of this information. If you have not put this in, I could actually update some of this information for myself. If you click on edit, that's well, then you can see what you can edit. So you are required for the first and last name. You can change your title if you'd like. Also, as Ted mentioned with ORCID, you can actually link your ORCID account here, which is really nice. And I'll sort of show you why in a minute. And then also if you have your NSF ID, you can also link that here. So then going back to the main screen, these are the things that I've created. You can see everything that's listed right here, all say old NIH Biosketch. So right now they're the old format. You can also see that there are options for sharing. So right now, 2 of these are public and 4 of them are private. So if I want to create a new one, I'm going to click on this create new document. And so this is where I can create a new document. So I just call it whatever I want to. You have some options here. So if you need to do a fellowship biosketch, that's a choice. The top one though is NIH Biosketch. So that's the one we're going to do right now. And then we're going to start with a blank document. And then the default is always private. You can always change it from public to private at any time. So then if we click on create, then you get the form. I'm just going to point out the sections again where things have changed. So in the personal statement, so you can edit the statement. So that's where the text goes in. And then you have these options of selecting citations. So when I click on that section, I then have 2 options here right now, 2 tabs. So one is for my bibliography, and then one is for ORCID. So this is pulling in what I've already entered into my bibliography. So you can see these are several of the papers that I've written. If I click over to the ORCID tab, it looks essentially the same. Again, this is pulling from my ORCID account because I've linked it. So again, this is trying to have these systems, help you work smarter, not harder. So it's pulling in all of that information for me. If it doesn't look like it's pulling in everything, you can always click on the refresh the list from ORCID. Ideally, this should work. I feel like NIH, I feel like is updating some of these systems. And so things have been a little funky. Even last week, things weren't showing up quite right. But I would say just do like a crazy person and try the exact same thing a few times. And sometimes it seems to work, even if you did the exact same thing and it didn't work. But this has worked for me. Sometimes it takes a few more times, but generally this should work if you need to refresh that list. If I go back also, you can see on the My Bibliography, there also is an option if you need to go to My Bibliography and make any changes or any additions there. But then once you've checked the things you want to include, and this worked that I could check a few things on the My Bibliography, I could check some things on ORCID, and then I clicked on the Save Citations up at the top. And now this is what my personal statement looks like. So it's pulling in these citations for me from actually both My Bibliography and ORCID. So that's sort of a nice feature of being able to do that. Down on section C, this is the contribution to science, and this is where you can add up to 5 contributions. So you have a few different tabs. So I have 2 contributions right now. If you need to add a 3rd or 4th or 5th, click on the add another contribution. Again, if I want to edit my description, I can do that. And again, similar to in section A, where you can select your citations. When you click on that, it will pull in anything you have from My Bibliography and or from ORCID. One of the important things to me is to make sure that if you do have a pretty extensive list, which I know lots of researchers do, you can include a link to your complete list of published work in My Bibliography. Since your SciENcv, or I guess the Biosketch, is limited to 5 pages, you can't include everything. But if you want to make sure they know where to find more of your stuff, you can check this box. And when you do check that, then you'll get these 2 lines below here. So this is actually providing a public link to my bibliography. So once you've done that, this is what it looks like. So this is a test version from NIH of what it looks like in that section C. So this is their third contribution. So I shrank it a little bit, but under the third contribution, and then at the end is just those 2 lines. So that's a way of when you're not able to include everything, all of the publications you want to with that biosketch, you can have those just two lines on your biosketch which will have that link to all of your published works. And then I wanted to show you, I already opened this one up. Let me find that. So this is what the biosketch looks like now in the new format. So hopefully this looks fairly familiar. So let me scroll on down. So I didn't go through, so you have sections like this to fill out in the SciENcv tool. I will say, I haven't found an easy way to input this. It's really, you have to do it one at a time, which is kind of a pain. So I would say, find some time and you do it once and then it's saved in the system, which is nice. Then we get to section A, which is the personal statement. So this is what folks are used to seeing is sort of this first paragraph up at the top. This information here, this is what often people would put into section D. So these are the ongoing and recently completed projects. So you can see there's the grant information. So often this is what was contained in that section D. So now you can put it up in section A. And then here are the citations that are being pulled in from either my bibliography or from ORCID. Section B, this is the one that changed its name now to this position, scientific appointments and honors. So you can see both their titles and roles, as well as members of professional societies and other things that need to be included in here under that scientific appointments is there. And then we have the honors. And then section C, again, so you can see this is the first contribution and there are those citations being pulled in. Let me scroll on down in section. So this is their second contribution and then third contribution. And then at the bottom should be that list of published works. Okay. So then I think the last thing that I wanted to mention is just showing how you can create multiple versions of the NIH Biosketch. So if I already had I go to create a new document, I call it whatever I want. I chose an NIH Biosketch. You also have a data source. And so instead of starting with the blank document, you can go and choose existing document. So I'm choosing the summer 2021, and then I can just create. And so it will pull in all of the information from the summer 2021. It's now saved as fall 2021. And if I want to make any changes, I can. So to me, that seems pretty straightforward and sort of a nice way. Again, especially if you're going to be using this a lot, is you can, type in those positions and honors, one time, and then you can always essentially just create multiple versions of your biosketch without having to type all of that in again. And I think I went crazy fast through things. So then I have a list of resources here at the end, and I found this really helpful, both for the biosketch as well as for the other support information. If you want me to show anything live, I should be able to do that too, but I think I am finished now.
Excellent. This has been incredibly informative to me. I would ask, Beth, are you intending to provide your presentation to us as well so that we can?
Yes, I will send that out afterwards, especially for those links. It was, having those available is nice.
Awesome. So we do have some time for questions and answers for Ted and Beth. I am wanting to just let you know if you're needing CME credit, the code is found in the chat. And so if you have, as you have questions, please go ahead and add them in. I will start with a question of my own. This is kind of for Ted, I guess, directed to Ted, but either one of you are welcome to answer it. The NIH Biosketch and the other support work, clear motivation for researchers to utilize ORCID and help gather that information there. The question I guess I had for Ted, I'm unfamiliar with the ORCID tool. Are there other direct applications, is data downloadable, for example, in some form to be able to use in presentations, that kind of thing?
That's a good question. So I don't know about for use in presentations, but as Beth mentioned, you can export your data from ORCID in a variety of formats. So BibTeX is the one. It's essentially just a structured text file that you can import then into DMAI, or you could use in a variety of other applications. Most reference managers like Zotero and EndNote support integration with BibTeX. So if you wanted to export, if you have all your publications in EndNote, you could export them in BibTeX and then import them into ORCID and vice versa. So there is some features there.
Very good, thank you. The other general question that I have is related to the Biosketch itself. You mentioned, Beth, that there's a deadline when you have to start using the form of January of 22, but that the form has already been active. And you implied that it's really important for researchers to begin using the new form immediately. Are there going to be repercussions, as it were, as it gets later on, if we have researchers who delay getting moved over to the new format?
So that's a great question, right? I'm not NIH compliance, even though sometimes I feel like it. I mean, what they say in their notice is that beginning with applications submitted on or after January 25th, 2022, failure to follow the appropriate Biosketch format may cause NIH to withdraw your application from consideration. So I think you can take that for what you will. Again, I'm guessing most people on this call have more experience of actually submitting grant applications than I do. And so you may know how severe or not severe that sounds.
Right. Well, clearly it is being expressed through your presentation that Indiana University, IUPUI, and the School of Medicine are all very strongly urging researchers to start using it now. And you provided resources on your presentations, which we will get to everybody. Are there other contacts or other resources that you'd want to mention for researchers or their administrators who are working on this right now?
I mean, my short answer is I know that IU is a really large system and there's a pretty good research infrastructure. So, I mean, we can always help with some of these questions when it actually comes to some of these grant questions. I'm guessing that ORA or ORC, may also be good places with folks who have much more experience than I do in that. So I would definitely reach out to those folks.
All right. Do we have any other questions anybody wants to raise at this point?
There was a question that came in via chat about searching for variations of names in ORCID and whether or not that's necessary, like if you publish with a middle initial or something like that. So short answer is yeah, it is necessary, but hopefully, once you populate your ORCID profile, it will eliminate the need for that in the future. One thing that you might want to try, Beth mentioned that your Google Scholar profile, if you have one of those that is complete and accurate, that you can import those publications from Google Scholar. Another thing that I didn't talk about, but if you use the search and link feature under Works, and this is mentioned in the handout that I'll send to you, but if you have a Scopus ID, ideally your Scopus ID will have kind of already addressed that issue, at least for the things that you've written that are in Scopus. You can pull in all your publications that are in Scopus. Yeah, short answer, yeah, you'll have to kind of search with the different variations of your name, but that's a good question.
Always one of the most difficult parts of it is when there are people with similar names out there in publications.
I
Great.
think that's one of the strengths of ORCID is it, like, PubMed does a lousy job of disambiguating authors. And so I think that's one of the reasons that ORCID exists, is because there's definitely a need for that. Or if people's name changes, or let's say they have, you know, two middle names, like not everyone has a first name, middle name, and last name. That's not a structure that works for everyone. And so being able to provide multiple options, I think, one, helps people find you and know who you are and who your stuff is. Like even Ted and I, both of our names here says Ted Polley, it says Beth Whipple. That's not what it says on either of our ORCIDs, because that, you know, and so it's just, I think it highlights the fact that it's the best tool that I've seen, and ORCID has been around for a while. And it's nonprofit. It seems like a lot of academic institutions are also seeing the value of it. NIH is now making folks included on their submissions for a lot of trainees. So I think it's not going away. If anything, it's going to become more ubiquitous and used much more in academia. So if you don't have one, get one, and then you know that you can maintain it. It can go with you whether you stay here or go elsewhere. And it really, you control the information that's in it, what you want to share, what you don't want to share.
Very good. All right. I don't see any other particular questions. We do have a comment from one of our grants administrators here in the Regenstrief Institute that said that we are starting to receive application guidelines from other universities requiring subrecipient organizations to be using the new forms. So just another reason to get it going as soon as possible. Okay. Anything else that you, Ted, or Beth would like to say in conclusion?
So Lisa, that's a good question. So similar in NCBI or some other NIH systems where they can have a delegate, essentially when Ted was talking about the organizations are trusted individuals, that essentially is the same as having a delegate. So they would have to log in first and then, you know, set you up as a trusted individual, but that's definitely something that's doable with ORCID. I did want to add, sorry, Deborah, so I mentioned my bibliography, but I didn't actually get into how you populate and how you manage it. So because that wasn't the focus for today, but I'm always happy to talk with folks or show you our handouts that we have on that and walk through that if people are interested at a later time.
Yep, and I'll just add one quick thing I forgot to mention in my slides, but so Rachel Henricks, who's the public health librarian, many of you probably worked with her at various points. She's also an expert in ORCID. So if you have any questions about ORCID and you feel more comfortable reaching out to Rachel, by all means, definitely let her know what your questions are and she can help you.
Great. And we did have a question about getting the slides. We will be sending the slides out to the same invitee list that received this notice. If you are participating and had it forwarded to you and we don't have you on the list, feel free to respond to the forwarded appointment that you had and send an email to Regenstrief working WIP presentations and we'll make sure you get copies of everything. And Beth, I might suggest if you've got document regarding already that's kind of a help for people who are wanting to update their My Bibliography, feel free to provide that as well. That would be great. We can send it.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll share the link to our handout that we have.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time in presenting to us today. It was very useful information. Thank all of you who participated. We have very good attendance to it, and we hope that this will be helpful for for everyone to start getting familiar and start using the new form. So thank you very much.